Welcome back for part 4 of my story from tragedy to triumph. If you've watched all of the other parts, I want to put an emphasis on how much I'm appreciative of the fact that you're dedicating some of your time to listening to my story. I'm humbled by the fact that people are receiving a message from this story. I am sorry for the delays in putting out the rest of it. This should be the last one that I have to do. I think I should be able to finish up the rest of the story at this point. But I'm sorry for the delay. Like I said, I've been working this turnaround, and on top of that, we had summer vacation. Me and my kids went out to Florida, so I was spending time doing that, just focusing on being with them, being present. So sorry for the delay with the videos coming out, but like I said, I should be able to make it through the rest of the story at this point in this last one. So to not spend too much time, I'm gonna just get right back into it. I do have to go back a little bit to part 3. I forgot to mention that not too long after I got out of the psychiatric unit, 2 of my homeboys, actually 3 people, it's 3 people that I knew, 2 of them that I hung with pretty much every day. They were a part of the crew that me, Johnny, and Shannon would run with. We would be at work together. We all worked at the same place. We went everywhere together. This was the people that I was with majority of the time. And the other guy, I knew him loosely. I knew him through a sibling of his, but I was familiar with him as well. And like I said, a few months after I got out of the psychiatric unit, they wound up catching a murder charge. And as I'm coming out of the psychiatric unit, my mind frame is changing, but I'm not making significant changes in my life yet. I'm still doing some of the dumb stuff that I had been doing. Selling drugs, fighting, all of that. Still doing pretty much the same stuff, but my mind frame is changing. I'm starting to, like I said, recognize like the coincidences in my life where things may typically go a certain type of way, but for whatever reason it didn't go that way with me, or the people that God is placing in my life. I'm just starting to be more aware of the things that I'm doing and the things that's going on around me. And on top of that, I'm changing my mind frame more to what Uncle Earl has been saying this whole time, the seed that he's been planting as far as my life having a purpose, and that, I'm here for something great, or, just my story is gonna, uplift people, however you want to look at it. I'm starting to look at life more like, I have a purpose, a greater purpose, because of the things that I went through. There's something greater. So, like I said, I'm not really making the changes yet. I'm still hanging around the same environments and all of that, but I am more aware. I am making slightly better decisions, I guess you would say. But at the same time, like I said, I'm starting to get used to this idea of people looking at me and saying, they see me as a strong person, and, I made it through this and I made it through that, and I'm a smart individual, etc., etc. And I'm kind of like letting that get to my head to a point where like I'm becoming complacent as far as that healing journey, or actually addressing the things that I went through. At this point in time, I was just aware of like the implications, I guess you would say, of the things that I went through, not necessarily working actively towards it. So they go down for that murder charge, and I'm just kind of like, I go back to, my elementary school days with Coach Washington. For whatever reason, certain people and certain things that are said to me have resonated with me throughout my lifetime. And Coach Washington said something one time basically to the effect that some of the people that I'm growing up with, some of the people that we are in class with, that we see every day, they're going to be locked up. Some of them are going to be in the cemetery. And when he was telling us that, I didn't see myself. He was saying how he had friends that, ended up dead, ended up in the cemetery, ended up in prison and stuff. And at that time, as a kid, I was like, I don't have that to worry about. None of my friends will ever do that. Like, I couldn't believe that I was at a point in my life where like I have friends that are on the news right now going down for a murder charge. So, like I said, I'm starting to notice things. I'm starting to actually believe that there's a purpose for my life, a purpose for my pain and my suffering. And that was just one of those events that kind of started to slow me down a little bit. It made me realize how real some of the decisions that I'm making are, and the very real consequences that can come with it. Now, I was never doing any of the types of things that these two friends were doing. Me and Johnny and Shannon, we kind of, like I said, we did mischievous things, but we were never, you know, the robbing type or stealing from people, any of that stuff like that. We never were those types of kids or whatever. Well, Johnny actually, you know, he was always kind of into his Bible. I'm not saying he was, you know, super religious, but he did like have a Bible that I would catch him reading very frequently, actually. Shannon, same thing, you know, just he's got a good upbringing, he's got a good mind on his shoulders. We always thought just a little bit differently. That was a blessing in its own. But they go down for that, and you know, one of them, you know, he eventually gets convicted for it, and he ends up getting sentenced to 20 years. And like I said, I'm just starting to notice that, like, what I thought I desired for myself, I really don't desire that for myself. But yeah, I graduate and I go straight into the workforce pretty much. I didn't bother with going to college. I wanted to get as much money as I could as fast as I could. I didn't want to bother. Like I said, I had that conversation with my grandfather when I was a kid, and that kind of like took away my desire to pursue any of those types of careers anyway. So I didn't know exactly what I would go to school for. In my mind, he had raised me to be a worker. He raised me to work with my hands, and I was cool with that. I was like, I'm gonna just go work in the refineries. That's what, in my area of the country, that's what we do. We go work in the plants if we want to make some money, and you don't have a degree. You can make, you know, fairly good money, especially if you're just coming out of high school. You can make fairly good money working in the plants and stuff. So that's what I did. I went working the plants, but I realized quickly that wasn't something that I wanted to do long term either. And not to sound arrogant, I knew that it wasn't something that I had to do. You know, I had other options. I'm seeing guys, you know, in their late 40s and their 50s, still having to wake up early, still having to go out there in that heat. And I'm talking about hard work, you know what I'm saying? It's very laborious work. So I'm like, man, I don't want to be doing this for 30, 40, 50 years of my life or whatever. So I'm gonna go to school. So eventually, you know, I go to school. During this time though, that's not exactly when I decided I was gonna go to school, but that is something that led me to going to school. I stopped working in the refineries. I'm purely just selling, you know, like I said, I'm not a drug lord or anything like that. I'm not a kingpin or whatever, but I'm making enough money to sustain myself, really. Buy myself a few nice things, you know, go out to eat, whatever, those types of things. But, you know, I'm not making any steps at this point in time towards like being better. I'm still doing the same dumb stuff. I kind of like got enveloped in that whole little, trying to maintain that image. You know, when I started fighting, when I started doing all of this stuff that I was doing off to the side, it seemed like I was getting more respect. I didn't have to worry about people trying to do me anything. It seemed like, you know, I had got to the point where, you know, I had wanted to be, I guess, quote unquote, where, you know, I'm this respected guy, and I don't know, I kind of got lost in what I was doing for a little while there, and not even realizing still the seriousness of it all. And, you know, at a certain point, I'm driving back and forth from Houston with a lot of stuff in my car, stuffed up in the doors of in the paneling of the door and all of that, and up underneath the bumper and stuff, just crazy stuff that I could have wound up getting a lot of time for, which, you know, I didn't have a record or anything like that. But point being, I was doing reckless stuff. I wasn't making strides to live that life of purpose that I was starting to believe that I did have. But I did eventually, you know, I saw that this isn't really the life that I wanted. I decided I'm gonna go to school. So I go to the University of Lafayette for a full year, but I still took that same mentality over there. I don't know why I was so stuck in that zone, in that mind frame where I had to be the quote unquote bad guy or anything. But I took that same mentality over there to college, and I did bad. I didn't have any experience with college. My sister, this is the time me and my sister start to really develop our relationship. Like I said, she's 11 years older than me. She was already being raised by my grandparents when we got out here. So I was 6, she was 17 when it happened. She was moving out soon, etc., etc. But we're starting to develop our relationship, and she's trying to help me through school. She helped me with my FAFSA stuff, helped me with my application, all of that. But like the actual school aspect, I felt so just, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing in college. To the point, like I remember I was in one class, and the professor is like going through slides fast, I mean super fast, and I'm sitting there trying to write down everything that he's got on the slides and stuff like that. And this girl taps me on my shoulder, and she's got like the printout and stuff. I didn't even know that you could go get the printout. You know, I didn't know you could get the printout of the course or whatever. So like I just felt real like, I don't know. I don't want to say stupid. I just felt clueless. I felt lost while I was there. So I still was just trying to entertain the same stuff that I was entertaining in high school, the stuff that had, you know, worked as far as me getting attention and respect and all of that other stuff. So I ended up doing terribly bad in college. I did good the first semester. The second semester just completely bombed it. And after that second semester, I came back from, I'll say second semester, well, yeah, third semester, whatever. I ended up coming back to Lake Charles and working again, going back to work and just going through motions. Not really, I didn't have a guide, I didn't have a plan. I was just kind of just like floating through life. I didn't even really, I wasn't even looking, you know, years out or anything. I was really just in the moment, just trying to make it through the moments. At this point in time, I'm still struggling with, you know, how I view myself. I view myself highly inadequate. I see a lot of things wrong with myself, but I'm also like starting to, like I said, people are starting to give me those compliments and starting to seek me out for advice, thinking that, you know, because I made it through what I made it through, that I have some type of answers and all this other stuff. I don't know. People see me as this, I don't know what you would call it. I don't know what you would call it, but I have older people that are like actually like gravitating towards me and, you know, saying I'm wise beyond my years, but I don't see it. I don't feel it about myself. Especially with me, you know, bombing college the way that I did and all of that. I just really didn't have a very good, I didn't have self-confidence. I didn't have very much self-esteem. I was just like floating through life, like I said. Knowing that I'm capable of more, feeling like I do have a greater purpose here, but not really doing anything to obtain it. I'm kind of just expecting that things are just going to fall in place. I eventually, you know, find out that I'm going to be a dad. And this marks like the turning point really, where I start to actually like take steps towards being a better person. Knowing that I had a kid on the way, you know, that just did something to me. Talked to my grandfather about it. He basically told me, you know, you're gonna have to go to work now. You know, it is what it is. You're gonna have a baby that you gotta take care of. So that's what I did. You know, I stayed back in the workforce. I didn't go back to school. I didn't attempt to finish anything. I just, you know, got me a job. And I ended up with a fairly decent job. Like, to say I was 21, 22 years old at the time, you know, I was making pretty good money. Enough money to sustain a family for sure. Maybe not a life of luxury or anything like that, but definitely a good job, a career job that I could hold, you know, for the next 20, 30 years if I had chose to. So, everybody's just kind of like, now my family is starting to like give me compliments and tell me how proud they are of me, that I'm doing good. My grandfather was super proud. I was driving a forklift and stuff. In his mind, you know, that was like working some type of heavy machinery. You know, you made a lot of money back in his day. So he's like super proud about that. And like I said, I'm getting real complacent in my development because people are giving me these compliments and saying how they admire my strength. And I'm not understanding how they see it as strength, because on the inside, I don't see those things about myself. I don't. But the fact that other people are seeing it, I'm just like, hey, I'll roll with it. Whatever I'm doing right now, it must be working, because for whatever reason, people see good in me. But I wasn't addressing what I needed to address. I just kind of, I was aware of it. I was aware that, you know, me graduating high school, despite the things I went through, that seemed to be a major thing to people, that I held my employment and stuff like that. But a lot of people didn't know what was going on in the background, like I said, the irritability, the outburst and stuff like that. So, but I'm letting that get to my head. And not too long after that, not too long after my daughter is born, my grandfather starts to get sick. And I remember one of the first times that he fell down, like he lost his balance and he fell down. I just remember it being super weird for him because, like I said, my grandfather's a super strong man. He's always, you know, highly determined, highly self-motivated, and, you know, he didn't let his disability stop him in the least bit. So I found it funny. And even though I'm more aware about how fast things can change, how fast you can go from having someone to not having someone, I still wasn't, I don't know why, but I just didn't see that happening to my grandparents. I felt like, and I know it sounds crazy, I felt like I have them way longer just because of how strong they were, how healthy they were. They looked much younger than their age. I just, in my mind, it was going to be a long time before I had to deal with any of this type of stuff. But sure enough, you know, he took sick, and it took a while. You know, I sat there and I watched the person that I derived most of my strength from. I'd say like 90-95% of my strength. I was watching him lose his. I was watching him on his decline, and it took a while. It wasn't, you know, something that happened quickly, like with my parents. It was something that was kind of dragged out, and, you know, he just slowly but surely went downhill. And just watching that, the moments when I had to go, you know, and get him out of his hospital bed and put him in his wheelchair, and he wanted to go smoke a cigarette, and he doesn't even have enough strength to hold his head up. He's hanging his head off the back of the wheelchair like this, and he's smoking his cigarette. Like, that stuff was taking a toll on me. It was taking a serious toll on me. At the same time, mentally, I'm kind of like, I've always been hard on myself, and I'm pretty sure, like, I'll always just be hard on myself because, or I feel like because of the way that everything was criticized about me growing up. And I don't want to really say criticized, but they paid attention to every detail of every fiber of my being. Like, if I wasn't doing something right, they were on it. Even if I felt like I was doing something right, they'd tell me it wasn't right. I just always was super hard on myself, as far as my feelings of adequacy and the potential that I had or that I have, and not really acknowledging it or realizing it or manifesting it. I was really just being hard on myself. So I'm regretting, you know, not finishing school, and I'm regretting not doing this and not doing that. I'm just dealing with a lot of regrets and looking at myself and feeling like, you know, I haven't really done much, even though I do have a pretty decent job, and, you know, I'm taking care of my family, this, that, and the other. In my relationships, I'm not trying to do too much on my relationships because they're not here to speak for themselves. On the off chance that this does go, you know, crazy, goes viral and stuff, I wouldn't want to be sitting here sounding like I'm, you know, bad talking the mother of my children or the mothers of my children. But you know, really not. My idea of love, or my idea of a woman's place in my life, was to be the nurture that I didn't get from my mom or from my grandmother. And not to say my grandmother didn't give me nurture, but I mean like that endearing, that unconditional type of love feeling or whatever. And I wasn't really aware of the fact that I went through all of these things, but not everybody is able to deal with those things the way that I'm having to deal with them, or able to understand the feelings that I'm having, because they haven't gone through things like that themselves. Like I said, I don't want to do too much on the relationships, but, you know, during this time when my grandfather passed away and stuff like that, me and my daughter's mom, we start, you know, having our issues and stuff, and eventually we wind up separating, etc., etc. like I said, I'm still mentally dealing with stuff. I'm insecure. Like I said, self-esteem non-existent. But I'm believing what everybody else is saying about me. Even the people that I'm working with, they're saying, I'm such, a wise young man, and I'm, wise beyond my years and all this other stuff like that. I don't feel it on the inside at this time. I don't see it. But hey, if y'all feel like that about me, then okay, it is what it is. So fast forward a little bit further, I meet my son's mom. We start dating, and around this time, was it around this time? Yeah, around the time that I met her is when Johnny gets his diagnosis. He has kidney cancer. And do I need to go back some? Yeah, I need to go back some. So before that happens, the uncle that I spoke of in one of my previous videos that, would come and take us, me and my little brother, every Friday night, we'd go spend the night with him and my aunt. He gets a diagnosis for cancer. And so this is another person. Like I said, as a kid, I was pulling, the men that were in my life, I was pulling bits and pieces from each man, trying to build in myself what I thought would be, the ideal type of man, I guess you would say, the man that I wanted to be. I was pulling bits and pieces from everybody. So I had a lot of people that I took on as father figures, despite the fact that they probably didn't spend a whole lot of time with me, whatever it might be. The men that were in my life, I pulled bits and pieces from each one of them. So this, my Uncle Joe, he was a very stoic, very wise. Like you could just see, look at him and see that he was a wise man, right? He took very good care of his family, down to taking care of his mom and his dad because they were up in age, and, taking care of his brothers and stuff. Like he was just all around, Uncle Joe was like, he was a man amongst men. He was a manly man. And I derived a lot of my strength from him too. I learned a lot of stuff from him as well. He starts to go on his decline, and, I'm trying to take care of a family now. I have somewhat of an idea of what that is, what that looks like because of Uncle Joe, because of my grandfather, because of my other uncles, how they took care of their families and stuff like that. But I still don't really have a good grasp on it as much as I feel like I need to. So I'm kind of dealing with that. Like I said, I have severe feelings of inadequacy during this time of my life. And so Uncle Joe is passing away. I mean, he's on his decline and stuff. There was a night where my Aunt Sylvia called us to go, be with her because he was kind of struggling, and she just wanted somebody to be there with her until hospice arrived. So, seeing that, not too long after that, Johnny gets his diagnosis. Now, I'm just now meeting my ex-wife, and he gets his diagnosis. And I'm just like, I'm not looking at it from the same perspective when I was younger, where it's like, I'm cursed and God is taking people away from me and stuff. But I am just kind of confused as to why I have to have such a familiarity with death. Why does it seem like I'm constantly having to go through this process? And that's not to say that when he got his diagnosis that I thought about that. When he got his diagnosis, I took it as just a diagnosis. And that's how I've operated with every cancer diagnosis that I've dealt with amongst my peers, my family, and all of that. I definitely didn't write him off as already being gone or anything of that nature. But, Johnny this is the person that I pray for. This is like my replacement big brother. Like I said before, me and Johnny, like, as close as I felt to my big brother, that's as close as I felt to Johnny. He really looked out for me. He really took me under his wing as a little brother, like protected me from a lot of stupid decisions that I would have made, and had my back when I was in other situations. Just, he was really everything that I had prayed for and everything I felt like I needed. Nothing short of it. So now, I have to be there with him through his journey. And like I said, I'm not writing him off. I'm not looking, I'm like, we're going to beat this thing. Like, if anybody's going to beat it, Johnny's going to beat it, because he's a super healthy guy. It doesn't even make sense that he has this diagnosis. Johnny was a professional boxer at this point in time. and healthy. I'm talking about never did a drug in his life, never drank alcohol, never smoked a cigarette. He rarely, he didn't like to take medicine. He would take Tylenol PM every now and again to go to sleep. But like a super healthy dude, he ran miles every day. Like the healthiest person that I knew. I just couldn't even understand how he would end up with, kidney cancer. It just blew my mind. But, we're here. But like I said, he's one of the strongest people I know. I'm like, if anybody can beat it, he's going to beat it. So I'm with him, from diagnosis on through and stuff. So, about a year later, is when I got married. He was there for my marriage, and, he was declining. And seeing it happen and trying to remain faithful that it was in God's hands and that, God was going to heal him, and watching some of our other peers kind of write him off and kind of fail to show up in the ways that I feel like they should have shown up. That was something that was hard too. So I'm dealing with a lot at this era of my life, between the age of like 21 to like 24, 25. Like all of this stuff, and I'm trying to lead a family. My wife, we get married. A few months later, she's pregnant with my son. Maybe like 6 or 7 months later, she's pregnant with my son. Johnny has his own family. He's married. He has a daughter. My ex-wife, she has, I have a daughter. My ex-wife has a daughter. We're about to have a son together. A lot going on. I'm working at this job. I'm feeling inadequate. I'm starting to get to the point at this job where I'm feeling like, not that I'm better than this. I don't want to make it sound like that, but I'm capable of more than this. And I should have been doing more than this. I had everything going for me as far as academics and all of this other stuff. I feel like, I'm not really doing much with myself. Like I could be doing better, but I don't know exactly how to get to that better. It feels like I've made so many mistakes and I've taken so many wrong turns that like I'm in limbo now. Or not say limbo, but I'm going through the motions right now. I'm just doing what the average person does. And like I said, I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but I don't feel like the average person. I haven't gone through average things in my life. Academically, I don't feel like I'm average. Like, I feel like I could be doing more, but I don't know exactly how to get there. Plus, I'm also dealing with the loss of my grandfather. That was, like I said, that was 95% of where I derived my strength from. And not having that person to go and ask questions, like, as a father, from one father to another father, to, lead me on the way that I should. I was just dealing with all of these things. And so Johnny's on his decline, right? Like, just, but with still faith. And his strength through his journey is what kind of carried me after his passing. He took it on the chin. He never once cried about it. He never once, he always had 100% faith in God that he would have his healing. And he even said it. He said, I know that if I don't get my healing here, my healing is going to be in heaven. He's like, either way, I'm going to be healed of this. And just the way that he took it, and I mean, he just took it head on. He took it head on. And that showed me something. That gave me an extra, despite the fact that I did, it got bad before it got better. That's one of the things that he left with me, is the way that he faced that. Me and my ex-wife, poor thing, she met me at just a completely bad time in my life. Like I said, I'm not going to do too much on the relationships, but she didn't know how to be there for me the way that I needed her to be there for me. And I was expecting more from her than she was able to provide, that more than most people would be able to provide. So we were at odds. She couldn't understand. She didn't even understand me and Johnny's friendship. Like I said, she had just met me. We knew each other all of our lives, but we never interacted. So she's just now getting to know me really. And, you know, all of the things that I've been through leading up to this, you know, it was a lot. It was a lot. So, you know, there's turmoil in my marriage. Like I said, she's pregnant with my son. I'm kind of fearful that I'm not going to be enough, or that I'm not going to know enough or be able to show my son enough to be a good man. I don't feel like I'm a good man at this time. I desire, and I've always desired for him to be much better than I am. But I'm scared. I'm scared because, you know, I don't have my grandfather. I don't have Uncle Joe. It appears that I'm losing Johnny. Like I said, I'm trying to remain faithful, but it appears that I'm losing Johnny. Just a real heavy time for me. It was a real heavy time for me, and it made me realize that, you know, the things that I needed to address, I hadn't addressed them. I was aware of them. I knew how to speak. I knew how to speak as if I was very convincing when it came to uplifting other people and seeming as if, you know, I had it together and I made it through those situations, and I, you know, life without my parents, etc., etc. I was very good at kind of just hiding, you know, what I was feeling on the inside, what I was going through on the inside. So, you know, even down to like a man that I worked with that was in his 60s, he lost his mom, right? And he's going through it. He's going through it. I can see it on him. And one day he pulls me to the side and he's like, Lamar, he was like, how did you do it? Now this is a 60-year-old man. He's biblically, you know, he goes to church every Sunday. He's a deacon, all of this stuff like that. He knows his Bible. He's coming to me for advice on how did I get through losing my mom. That's the way that people viewed me. And I couldn't wrap my mind around why people viewed me like this. And I tried to give him the best advice that I could. And, you know, through trying to help him, I actually like learned some things about myself. I realized that at that moment in time, for one, you know, I was 6 years old when it happened. I had no choice but to go with it. You don't, I mean, at 6 years old, you barely even know that this isn't something that's normal. So that's the main thing. And then on top of that, I'm not burdened with, and I know that sounds bad, but I'm not burdened with the memories. I feel much worse for people who are losing their parents right now in their older lives. I feel a lot of empathy for them and sympathy for them because they have those memories. They have 30, 40 years worth of memories with their parents. They have, you know, they know what their mom's favorite scent was, her favorite perfume was. They know what her favorite TV show was, her favorite food, favorite restaurant. They have memories at this building, that building, this road trip they took, these pictures. I didn't have any of that. I didn't have any of that. And like I said, my grandparents, they didn't talk about it. I didn't have any stories of her. I had 5 memories, maybe 6 memories, a handful of memories of my mom. So I wasn't burdened with that. I said, so it's different, you know. But the one thing that I can say is that I know for a fact that everything that she taught you, all of the love, all the energy that she put into you is still here through you. And that she wouldn't want you to be down and depressed and hurt behind her not being here. All of those feelings that we feel are kind of quote unquote selfish feelings, right? Because we want that person to be here for us. We want to be able to go to their house and see them and hold them and embrace them and talk to them. Whereas, you know, especially with him, he's in his 60s. I don't know how old his mom was, but she lived a very full life. And you know, those memories are actually a blessing. Like I said, I don't have anything. But like I said, that's how people were viewing me. I had men twice my age coming to me to ask me for advice about how to deal with grief and trauma. That's when I started kind of waking up to the fact that, okay, maybe this might be my purpose. This might be a part of my purpose, is where I'm able to connect with people on topics that most people wouldn't be able to connect with them on. So it's really a battle, because outwardly it looks like, okay, Lamar's is all composed and all of this stuff, but now I'm really kind of like going through it again, because lost my grandfather, which I'm now seeing as my father. Johnny eventually passes away. I lose him. my older brother. I lost my uncle, another father figure. Just back-to-back hits, right? And so all of this still trying to, and this is a thing amongst men, when you have a family, when you have people depending on you, when you have people counting on you, it's hard to really address what you're going through because you have to be the regulator of emotions for these other people, for your wife, for your children. If you're older in age, you know, your parents are getting older, you have to be there for them. It's a really, it's you know, it's just, that's one of those crosses that men have to, that we have to carry through our lives. Like, we're expected to show up and be that stability in other people's lives, right? We have to be that rock. But it's a hard task for me. Like, I'm doing the best that I can, but I'm failing. I'm not gonna lie. Like, all of these ideas that I had of protecting my children from my traumas and all this other stuff, like, I'm failing. Like, I'm in their lives, I'm active in their lives, and you know, they know that I love them. I tell them I love them. I'm hugging them. You know, I let them know that they're loved and all this other stuff, but I'm still having outbursts. I'm still like emotionally a desert almost when it comes to like my relationships. Like, I want to be off to myself a whole lot. I'm in my head a whole lot. And even down to like the verbal, the things that I would say verbally, like, we're into it. And, you know, if you want to talk about leaving, well, I'm going to let you know I lost my mama. The one person that was going to love me unconditionally throughout my entire life, I lost that already. Losing you isn't going to be anything. That's the way that I was treating my relationships. And I'm not proud of that, but that's the truth of the matter. That's the way that I was thinking. And that's a part of those things that people weren't seeing. When people would say that they were proud of me and that I was doing so good, I was so strong, they weren't seeing the stuff that was going on in the background. So that's why I could never really receive the compliments, because I knew that I wasn't exactly, you know, I knew that I could be better. I knew that I should be better. But Johnny passes away, man, and that was super tough. Like I said, I'm feeling naked again. I'm feeling lost again. I'm feeling like, why, you know, why would this happen again? Why would I get this close to, why would I have another brother and he gets taken from me again? And like I said, he was so healthy. He was such a healthy person, a healthy lifestyle. For him to catch cancer, it was just like, something's got to be up. I'm not gonna say I felt like I was cursed again, but I did feel targeted, you know what I mean? So, not too long after Johnny passes, my son is born, right? I remember the day that he was born, I'm walking out of the room going to the car, and I see his daughter running up towards me, and I'm like confused. His daughter is my goddaughter. And I'm like, I didn't even tell them what room number, what hospital, or anything like that, where we were. Like, how would they be here right now? And she just runs into my arms. I'm talking about full blast. And I've got Johnny heavy on my mind because he was there for the birth of my first child, my daughter. So I got Johnny on my mind heavy, and she just runs and jumps in my arms and stuff. Turns out his sister had a baby the same day that, you know, we had our son. So that was real comforting for me. But still not really. I'm still kind of like falling off. I'm still kind of breaking down on the inside for a second time. Not too long after my son is born, my grandmother calls us to the house, and she lets everybody know that she has cancer. And like, now I'm just like, man, this is just too much. Why do I have to be this familiar with death? And I'm aware of the fact that my grandparents are up there in age, so I'm not taking it super hard because they have lived full lives and all of that stuff, but it's just like, I'm losing everybody. Like, I'm losing everybody. Because I watched it happen on my dad's side of the family. Once the matriarch of the family passes away, the family kind of breaks up. It's not the same anymore. The patriarch, you know, the family stay together when the matriarch is still there. But once you got the patriarch and the matriarch gone, you know, that's when everybody else starts to create their own thing, their own traditions. They're spending more time with their own families or their spouses' families, however they might go. So when my grandmother tells us about her diagnosis, you know, I've been through it so many times at this point to where it's like, okay, like, you know, here's another rodeo. Like, I gotta knuckle down. I gotta be strong yet again. Even though, like I said, my relationship, my marriage is kind of like in shambles. It's in turmoil right now because I'm not doing right in that field. My children are witnessing things that I didn't intend for them to ever, have any knowledge of, like the pain that I had and all of that. I feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm failing as a father. I'm failing as a husband. I done pulled away from a lot of my friends after the Johnny situation. Like I said, I seen people kind of like act weird in that situation, not act in ways that I thought that they should have been acting. So I'm like secluding myself again. It's getting back kind of dark. The only thing that's different is I'm not like blaming it on God. I'm not saying I'm cursed or anything like that, but it's just I got all these questions. I don't understand why I'm losing everybody. I'm still trying to be there for the family, and it's way too much for me. One of the things that kept me kind of grounded somewhat is that I started learning how to day trade and how to invest on the stock market. And if anybody day trades or invests, they know that you have to be in control of your emotions or you're going to lose your money. Like, you're going to lose all of it. Nobody wants to lose money. So I started working on my psyche kind of around the time where Johnny got his diagnosis or when we got married and all of that type. So I'm kind of working on it already. So I think that kind of saved me a little bit, but I still ended up having to go back to counseling because it was just too much. When my grandfather and Johnny, it's like I'm losing my parents again and I'm losing my older brother again. And it's just crazy to say that you're losing your parents twice in one lifetime. You're losing, your oldest sibling, let's say, twice in a lifetime. It was beginning to be a lot. But with my grandmother, like I said, she told us about it. With her, the decline was not as exaggerated, I guess, as you would say. With my grandfather, she did have, she had pains, but I feel like she didn't suffer in the way that my grandfather suffered, which was something hard for me to watch. It was my grandfather suffering. I definitely didn't want to see my grandmother suffering. And, that was a mental battle on its own. One night my grandmother called me and she's crying, and this is weird to me. Like I said, my grandparents didn't cry about anything. I saw them cry maybe 2 times in my life. When Steve passed away, that's really the only time that I could think of. I mean, at the funeral for my parents, yeah, but I was real young then. So, like 2 times that I saw them actually crying. So for her to call me crying, that was weird. I'm like, what's up? I was like, what's wrong, Mom? I'm like, what's going on? I'm thinking I need, something going on at the house. And she was like, I'm just tired. She was like, I'm in pain. And she was like, I feel like I'm a burden to y'all. And she's like, I was just calling, to ask you to pray for me to pass away in my sleep tonight. I'm like, Mama, I can't pray for that. I can't, that's not something that I can just sit up here and pray for. I was like, you're not a burden to us. Everything that you've done for us, like, you'll never be a burden. Like, I don't mind doing anything that I have to do for you. So just trying to talk to her. I'm like, look, I'm about to come through. I don't know who all she called that night, but the fact that she called me, I don't know, maybe she just wanted to be heard. Maybe she called everybody. I don't know. This isn't something that I talked about with the family. I haven't talked about with my family. She might have called everybody and she just wanted somebody to hear. I don't know what all transpired that night, but she called me. And she was in need the same way that I was in need when I was a kid. She needed to be heard. She was going through something. And it was a super humbling and super humbling. Being there for her in a capacity that she wasn't able to be there for me. I didn't have any anger about it. Like, I felt blessed that I was able to be there for my grandmother in a moment of need. in a moment of weakness, and that she thought of me. She thought highly enough of me to call me. And so, like, even though, you know, that was hard. That was hard. That was a hard conversation to have with my grandmother. That was a hard night with her, right? Eventually she gets to the point where, you know, we know that, you know, in the moment, you know, she's gonna be transitioning. So my family were religious. With my grandfather, we got with him, you know, when we knew that he was on his way out. You know, we said our last piece to him, asked for forgiveness for the stuff we did to him and stuff like that. That was kind of hard because when I asked him for forgiveness, he didn't really give me, I guess you would say, a good response, because I basically just leveled with him. I was like, well, Paul, I'm sorry for all the things that I did to y'all, because I'm feeling guilty at this point in my life. I'm feeling like I shaved years off of their lives with the BS that I was doing as a kid. And I'm like, I'm sorry for the things I put y'all through. You know, I just want to ask you for forgiveness and all this stuff. And he kind of was just like, yeah, man, you did a lot of stuff. But if you've been on the journey with anyone who's going through, you know, cancer, they get to a point where they're kind of like delirious, right? Where like they're seeing people, they're having conversations with people that have passed away, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. Some of them say that they see a ship. You know, there's a ship pulling up. Some of them even get like a burst of energy. My grandfather, he got the burst of energy. Like, it was just like his body just came back to life, and you felt like he was going to be getting better because he got this random burst of energy. But that wasn't the case. But anyway, so, you know, he gave me some type of like delirious answer. With my grandmother, I go in and she's laying down in her hospital bed and she's smiling and she's talking, but she's not making any sense. But as I'm talking to her, you know, she keeps on doing like this on her face. Some little motion like this. She's doing like this, right? And I'm trying to figure out what she's trying to tell me. So I'm like, Mama, I was like, you want me to give you a kiss? And she nodded her head. So I gave her a kiss on the cheek and I looked in her eyes and I'm like, I love you, yeah. And she told me she loved me. And that was the only time that she said something that made sense, that she said clearly. She said, I love you too. And so I'm like, all right, go ahead, get you some rest. I'm about to go ahead and go. I was like, but I'm gonna see you later, all right? And so I take off. I walk out the room. I look back before, you know, I leave out the room. I look back at her and she's just smiling. She's got this big smile and she's waving at me and stuff. And it was like, that was the most at peace. I had been through it so many times. Like I said, like this was nothing new for me. I was so at peace with it. And knowing that she wasn't suffering, which, like I said, she did have some bad nights. She did go through some pain and stuff. But having that last memory, like it was super peaceful for me, but it was still hard, obviously. Nobody wants to lose somebody. So, you know, she passes away and it was just a lot. It was a lot. And I wish that I would have done better. I wish I'd have made some better choices during that time, but you know, you can't go back and do things differently. So, you know, I did eventually, I went back to counseling. That's why I eventually did the EDMR treatment, or EMDR or EDMR, eye directional movement reprocess, or something to that effect. Basically took me back to my traumas. Y'all can look that up for yourselves. I highly recommend this for anybody that suffers with PTSD, because that's what I was diagnosed with, was PTSD. Anybody that has PTSD or anything like that, like, I highly recommend you go and see somebody and, you know, ask some questions about that. I think it's EDMR treatment. And probably one of the best things that I've ever done in my life. I'm talking about, like, I used to get super anxious during rainstorms. I didn't want to drive in the rain and stuff, so my hands would get sweaty, and like I turned the radio down and everybody had to be quiet, and you know, I'm lashing out, and it was real bad, to where now after I did the EDMR, like, I didn't even realize I don't even realize it's raining sometimes. Like, I'm just driving normal, my hands aren't getting sweaty, my heart isn't racing, I'm not freaking out. It really I don't know how how it works. It's kind of creepy how it works, but I recommend that to anybody. So going through that, you know, eventually, I don't know, I can't tell the story without including it, but I mean, you know, me and my wife eventually separate, and you know, we divorced, all of that. Where was I going with it? Dang, I lost it. So I'm in counseling. I'm letting them know, you know, I'm putting everything on the table. I do the EDMR treatment. That stuff is working. And at that point, that's basically where I got to the point where it's like, okay, you're hurting other people with your stuff. You know what I'm saying? You have to address your stuff. You have to be, and not only for the other people, for yourself. Like all of these things that I desire for myself, for my kids, and all of that, I'm holding myself back by not addressing all of these things. And you know, it took work. Like I said, I was about 30 years old before I got it right. It took me 25 years from the age of 6 years old. And I'm not saying that I got it all down pat. I'm not saying that I got it all right. I still, you know, I still make bad choices from every now and again. I still make stupid decisions. But, you know, I finally reached a place in my life where, like, I'm okay with all the things that happen. And even though it's going to sound bad, I'm going to just be the truth. I'm going to tell the truth about it. I feel like I turned out a better person because of the things that happened. Like, it was probably a good thing that my life went the way that it went. And that's crazy. I know that sounds crazy. I know that sounds crazy. But it's the truth. I don't know if I would have acquired the wisdom that I have as far as these topics go. The experience that I have. I don't know if I'd be able to help people in the capacity that I'm able to help people. They come to me for advice. I don't know. All I can go off of is what is, what was, and that's it. And I know for a fact, you know, I have a blessed life. Like I can't ignore that fact. I have a blessed life. 2 amazing kids, you know, and that's a blessing for them. My trauma, even though, like I said, I did allow my trauma to affect them negatively in some instances as they were growing up. But my trauma has been a blessing for them because I spend all of my time with my kids. And there's a direct correlation to the car accident, me knowing how fast things can change, and me wanting to make sure that I'm in their life as much as possible, and that I teach them as much as possible, and that we create as many memories as possible. Because I know any minute it could be no more, you know? And I know that if I make certain choices or if I live a certain type of lifestyle, that I could expedite my my trip out of here, right? I know we can't walk around afraid of death and trying to avoid this and that, It's going to happen eventually to all of us, but we can make decisions that rush that process, that cause us to get up out of here earlier than we should have. And I'm realizing, I'm like, you know, I have these kids, you know, they need their daddy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't be doing foolish stuff that's risking or jeopardizing their time with me. I want to have as much time with my children. It's almost an obsession of mine. Like, I want to have as much time with my children as I possibly can. Even down to like the job, like when we have overtime and all of that, and you know, it's pretty much just free money on the table and stuff like that. I'd much rather sit here with my kids and do something with them than to go to work. And I'm not skipping out on it every time. I'm not saying it's like affecting me in that manner, but the amount of time that I desire with my kids is a direct correlation to the trauma that I suffered when I lost my parents. Hands down. I know that for a fact. So, you know, the traumas can turn into blessings, man. Me sharing this story with people and people getting the message and they're able to apply it to areas of their lives or areas of other people's lives, that's a blessing. You know, having my mental health, having my sanity, not having to be on medication. I'm not trying to knock anybody that is on medication, but just the fact that I don't have to rely on medication. I'm extremely blessed. Despite the things that went on in my life, the car accident, my parents passing away, those are just pages in this whole book. You know what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, you know, I have so many more things. I gained so much more. I don't want to say it like that, but I gained a whole lot out of my loss. And I'm aware of that fact, and I'm appreciative of that fact. And that's kind of the things that it takes. As men, we have to be introspective, self-analytical, self-critical, and you have to be careful with it. It's a balancing act. Like I said, I go overboard with it. I'm highly critical of myself. I'm always picking myself apart, and that's something I still have to work on, that I'm going to be working on for a while. And there's no shame in that. It is what it is. I know that, you know, I can be hard on myself, and when I catch myself in those moments, my daughter catches me sometimes, and she's like, Dad, she's like, I don't know why you tripping. Like, you're a good dad. Like, I love you. Like, I'm just hard on myself. I try to catch myself now. So it's not about getting it right every single time, and it's definitely not about sitting there crying. And as men, I'm not gonna say I don't recommend crying. I definitely recommend you get out what you need to get out, but we definitely have to appropriate that. We have to definitely pick and choose our battles, I guess you would say. I don't know how to really put that, but you know, as men, we got to take our lick. Man, I got a chip in my windshield. We got to take our lick, and you know, we got to do what we have to do in order to not let it affect the people around us negatively, the people that are counting on us, or even just strangers, just people on the street. We have to make sure that we do what we have to do to move forward. Acknowledge the pain. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes you have a memory about something. Drop you a tear. I'm not knocking any man that drops a tear about something that's really weighing on him. I was talking to a guy at work one day. He's an ex-Marine. Big dude, 6'6", probably, like 200 some odd pounds. We were having a conversation. He was talking about how he lost his parents. He heard a song, and he started thinking about his daddy, and man, he sat there and he dropped a few tears. Now, this is a guy, this is a manly man, you know what I'm saying? He admitted, he's like, yeah, I dropped a few tears. He's like, but you gotta dust yourself off, and you gotta keep on pushing. And that's, as men, that's how we have to function. He's acknowledging that he has that hurt, right? He let that hurt out. He talked about it with his wife, and he kept pushing. That laying down and just using it as a crutch and using it as an excuse for why you're treating people the way that you treat people and the things that you do, that's not. I don't entertain that notion at all. Get to the nitty gritty of it. Like I said, going to counseling, there's no shame in that either. Counseling isn't a thing. I think people think about counseling and they think about it being something that they have to do for the rest of their lives. And any counselor tell you that they don't. I feel like counselors, that's one of the only businesses where they don't want a reoccurring customer. Like, they want to give you the tools and resources to be able to uplift yourself and to deal with your mental health on your own. I would say 10 to 16 sessions is a good amount of time with the counselor. And after that, you should be able to move forward with yourself. And that's not to say that you'll never come back to a counselor. You know, we all go through things. I still have things that I have to go through in my life, but there's no shame in going and talk to somebody about it. Those first few counseling sessions are going to feel really good. Trust me, you're going to cry. You're going to get it out. You're going to have somebody listening to you that's not judging you and stuff. You're going to feel like you got it under control, but just keep on going for a little bit longer. That's my biggest advice. After you get through the vent part and, you know, you start getting to the tools and the resources and stuff, continue on through that part for a few more weeks, for a few more sessions, because, you know, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're allowing yourself that moment of relief or reprieve or whatever you want to call it. It can be deceptive. It can make you feel like you're better, but you still got to acquire those tools. But even counselors will tell you they don't want you to have to keep on coming back for the rest of your life. That makes them feel like they're not doing their job. So some of the stigmas around that, around counseling, and even around men's mental health, you know, when a man says that he deals with mental health issues, it's a scary thing for a lot of people, because a lot of times when men are dealing with mental health things, it reveals itself as aggression, as violence and stuff. And so there's a stigma associated with that, but that's on you. Like, you don't have to be a violent person. You don't have to be an aggressive person. That's not it's not a requirement. It's not just a default setting. It's not something that can't be, you know, worked around. So opening up about it can be kind of scary because you don't want people to judge you and stuff, but At the end of the day, man, it's you, it's your life, and it's the people around you that you're affecting with your stuff. You love them, you love your people, you need to get down to the nitty-gritty of it, man. Address what you got to address, find the tools and the resources, and get to work on it, man, because it's a beautiful life once you can really just get past some of those things. And again, like I said, I'm a regular dude, man. I'm about to end this thing. I'm a regular dude, man. I'm not a social media influencer. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not a businessman or any of the things like that. I'm a regular dude, blue collar worker. I don't have it all figured out. I don't want anybody to feel like I believe I have it all figured out, because I don't have it all figured out. But I do have these experiences. I do have situational knowledge in some areas that can help somebody. And now I'm accepting of that, and I'm more open to the idea of part of my purpose maybe being to help people through things that they're going through. So it's a beautiful life, man. Like I said, I went through a lot of stuff, and this mental health thing, it's a journey. It's that's something that I take issue with, is when people say, you need to go heal. And it's like, when that statement is true, if you have something that you need to heal for, you need to address it. You need to go heal from it. But some things are going to be lifelong things. Like, this is something that I'm going to deal with. You know what I'm saying? My view on life is going to forever be different from most people's because of the things that I've gone through. And I've had to accept that. But it doesn't mean that I'm healed. I have this scar. This is from the car accident right here, right? I had to have surgery. I had to close my face back up. This is 30 years old, right? And it's healed. You can see it ain't bleeding. It's nothing. I can touch it. It don't hurt, nothing like that. It's healed, but I have that scar. Same thing with some traumas, man. Same thing with grief. You'll probably have that scar, you know what I'm saying? But it doesn't have to define you. You don't have to allow it to affect you. Heal from it, and embrace it. All my friends going through losses right now with their family members, their moms, their dads, siblings, and stuff like that. My heart goes out to you. My advice in those situations is just be an extension of that person. That person is still here through you. You know what I'm saying? All of the things that they taught you, all of the love that they exuded, all of the energy that they put into you is still here through you. You be an extension of that love, that person that you want on this earth, right? And, cherish those memories. I promise. It hurts at first. You think about it and you cry and you miss the person and stuff like that. But I promise, give it a little while, work towards it. The same memories that make you cry, that make you hurt right now, you're going to be smiling, you're going to be laughing down the road. It does get better. It can get better. Having a support system is super important. I had a very good support system. I wasn't able to receive it for a large portion of my life, but I had a very good support system. You have to teach people to develop resilience. And that's something hard. Like I said, I think, and I'm not calling my grandfather Jesus, but Jesus was a carpenter, and my grandfather taught me carpentry. I think that was one of the most impactful things on my life, is him showing me how to be a problem solver. That's what learning carpentry did for me. It taught me to be a problem solver. And so when I get into situations, now I'm not looking at the situation and seeing it as overwhelming and it's impossible because I don't know what to do. I'm like, okay, let's look for a solution, because that's what you have to do sometimes when you're building things, when you're fixing on things. You have to look at the problem and you have to say, hey, like, okay, it's messed up, but what's the solution? What can I do to fix this right here? So I think that's something, it doesn't have to be carpentry, but something that develops like critical thinking skills or problem solving skills, right? So I'm blessed in that aspect that he taught me that. Anything that goes wrong in my house, I can pretty much fix on my own if I need to. And any of my loved ones, if one of my aunts calls me and needs something worked on, I can go work on it for her. So I have a lot of things to be, thankful for and to acknowledge how blessed I am. So that's my story. I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone that sat here and listened to the whole thing. And like I said, I'm very blessed. I'm very grateful that I was able to help somebody. Just share the message. Like I said, leave questions in the comments. If y'all have any questions about anything that I said, I'll elaborate on it. I'll go into deeper detail. I'll give you better examples. But yeah, I'm going to try and keep this thing going. I don't know exactly where this is going to go, but this has been one of the most fulfilling things that I've done in a very long time. Parts of myself while telling this story have been healed, and I didn't even realize that I need those parts healed. So yeah, man, I'm gonna keep it going. Like I said, I'm still on my journey. Like, I don't have it all figured out. I'm still working on it. I try to be better every day than I was the day before, and that's kind of how you have to approach things, you know. Men's mental health is a real thing, and I hope that more men are able to open up and be vulnerable enough to address the things that they need to, you know, address. So, yeah, like I said, thank you again, and hopefully I'll see y'all soon.